Welcome, brave souls. You thought it was over, but the terror has only just begun. So let's continue. Prepare yourself for part 2 of Minuke Ugly House horror story will leave you shivering in fear. In the meantime, things at Minuke had worsened to a really frightening degree. I dreaded the phone ringing. One morning, the two Pritchards Sr. awoke to find that nearly all the furniture in their bedroom had been moved out, including the bed they had been sleeping in. They had felt absolutely nothing. Food became suddenly and revoltingly decomposed. All the chimney pots had come down, not just into the garden but to the far side of the high road, except one which appeared pulverized on the living room floor. The obvious attempts of the Pritchards to keep a rational outlook had put paid to most of my suspicions by this time. I managed to locate a local man who had been employed during the erection of the bungalows as an extra hand. He had worked only on the foundations of Minuke, but what he had to say was interesting. They had found the going slow because of striking a layer of enormous flat stones, apparently trimmed slate, but as the side foundation where it fitted in with the plan and laying down rubble where it didn't. The concrete skin over the rubble. My ears burned when I heard about that, I can tell you. This wretched so-called concrete had cracked or shattered several times, which wasn't entirely surprising if it had laid as he described. The flat stones, he said, had not been seriously disturbed. A workmaid had referred to them as a giant's grave, so it was possibly an old burial mound. Nurse, perhaps. Those are fairly common along this coast, or even very much older. Apart from this, I am no die-hard skeptic. I may as well confess I was beginning to admit modest theories about a poltergeist. In spite of a lack of corroborative knockings and ornament throwing, there were 2 young children in the house, and the lore has it that they are often unconsciously connected with phenomena of that sort, though usually adolescents. Still, in the real estate profession, you have to be careful, and if I could see the Pritchards safely off the premises without airing these possibilities, it might be kindest to the bungalow's future. I went to Minuke that afternoon. It was certainly turning out an odd nook. I found a departing policeman on the doorstep. That morning, the back door had been burst in by 100 weight or so of soil, and Mrs. Pritchard was trying to convince herself that a practical joker had it in for them. The policeman had taken some notes and was given vague advice about civil action, which showed that he was out of his depth. Pritchard looked very tired, almost ill. "I've got to leave from my job to look after them," he said, "when we are alone." I thought he was wise. He had given his wife's illness as the reason, and I was glad of that. "I don't believe in unnatural happenings," he said. I agreed with them non-committally, but I am afraid of what ideas the kids might get. They are both at impressionable ages, you know. I recognized the symptoms without disappointment. "You mean you'd rather move elsewhere?" I said. He nodded. "I like the district, mind you, but there was a report like a gun in the every room." I found myself with both arms up to cover my face. There were tiny splinters everywhere and a dust of fiber in the air. The door had exploded, literally. To hark back to constructional details, it was one of those light, hollow frame and plywood jobs. As you will know, it takes considerable force to splinter plywood. Well, this was in tiny fragments, and the oddest thing was that he had felt no blast effect. In the next room, I heard their dog howling. Pritchard was as stiff as a poker. I felt it, he said. I felt this lot coming. I've got to knowing when something's likely to happen, it's all around. Of course, I began to imagine I'd sensed something too, but I doubt if I had really. My shock came with the crash. Mrs. Pritchard was in the doorway by this time with the kids behind her. He motioned them out and grabbed my arm. The thing is, he whispered, I can still feel it, stronger than ever by God. Look, will you stay at home tonight? In case in case things get worse, I can phone you. On my way back, I called at the town library and managed to get hold of a volume on supernatural possession and whatnot. Yes, I was committed now, but the library didn't specialize in that line, and when I opened the book at home, I found out it was very little help. Vampires of Southeastern Europe type of stuff. I came across references to something the jargon called an elemental, which I took to be a good deal more vicious and destructive than any poltergeist. A truly nasty form of manifestation if it existed. Those Norse gravestones were fitting into the picture uncomfortably well. It was fashionable in those days to be buried with all the trimmings, human sacrifice and even more unmentionable attraction. But I read on. After half a chapter on zombies and Romanian werewolves, the whole thing began to seem so fantastic that I turned seriously to working out methods of exploding somebody's door as a practical joke. Even a totally certifiable joker would be likelier than vampires. In no time I had settled down with a whiskey, doodling, wiring diagrams and only occasionally, like twinges of conscience, speculating on contacting the physics investigation people. When the phone rang, I was hardly prepared for it. It was confused. Distant voice, gabbling desperately, but I recognized it as Pritchard. For God's sake, don't lose a second. Get here. It's all hell on the earth. Can't you hear it? My God, I am going crazy. And in the background, I thought I was able to hear something. A sort of bubbling, shushing, wah-wah noise, indescribable. But you hear some odd sounds on telephones at any time? Yes, I said. I'll come immediately. Why don't you all leave? But the line had gone dead. Probably I have never moved faster. I scrambled out of the car with untied shoes flopping. I remember to grab a heavy stick in the hall, whatever use it was to be. I drove like fury, heart pelting straight to Minuke, expecting to see heaven knows what. But everything looked still and normal there. The moon was up and I could see the whole place clearly. Curtained lights in the windows, not a sound. I rang. After a moment, Pritchard opened the door. He was quiet and seemed almost surprised to see me. I pushed inside. Well, I said, what was happened? Not a thing so far, he said. That's why I didn't expect. I felt suddenly angry. Look here, I said. What are you playing at? Seems to me that any hoaxing round here begins to a lot nearer home than you had me believe. Then you would have me believe. Then the penny dropped. I saw by the fright in his face that he knew something had gone wrong. That was the most horrible, sickening moment of the whole affair for me. Didn't you ring? I said, and he shook his head. I have been in some tight spots, but there was always some concrete, actual business in hand to screw the mind safely down to. I suppose panic is when subconscious breaks loose and everything in your head dashes screaming out. It was only just in time that I found a touch of the concrete and actual. A kiddie's paint box on the floor, very watery. The children, I said. Where are they? I was just putting the little one to bed. She has been restless tonight, just wouldn't go. Crying and difficult. Arthur's in the bathroom. Look here, what has happened? I told him, making it as short and matter of fact as I could. He turned ghastly. Better get them dressed and out of here right away, I said. Make some excuse not to alarm them. I'd gone before I finished speaking. I smoked hard, trying to build up the idea of hoax in my mind. After all, it could have been, but I knew it wasn't. Everything looked cozy and normal. Clock ticking, fire red and mellow, half-empty cocoa mug on the table, the sound of the sea from beyond the road. I went through to the kitchen. The dog was there, looking up from its sleeping basket under the sink. "Good dog," I said, and it wiggled its tail. Richard came in from the hall. He jumped when he saw me. "Getting nervy," he said. "They wouldn't be long. I don't know where we can go if we have to leave tonight."
And that's where we leave our story for now. The mystery deepens and the horror grows, but there is more to uncover. If you enjoyed this part, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so you wouldn't miss the next chilling installment. Make sure to turn on the notification bell to be the first to know when the next part is released. Thank you for watching. Until next time, stay safe and keep the lights on.